author of the classic New York Times bestseller, Passages, Gail Sheehy dared to blaze a trail in a man's world as a groundbreaking girl journalist in the 1960s. Well, she's back with a candid memoir of her trials and triumphs and a new book called Daring, My Passages. Gail joins us this morning from New York. Good morning, Gail. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in a daring mood, Deborah.
That's great. Now, Gail, I know earlier in your career in the 1960s, you started out actually in journalism in fashion because that's what women did, and
that's
men
right.
wrote about the serious issues, but you were destined to change that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was stuck in the women's department at the Herald Tribune, and I snuck down the back stairs to cross the demilitarized zone into the testosterone zone where men worked in the city room, and made my way to the office of Clay Felker, who was remaking journalism in the pages of New York Magazine, and pitched him a story. I was scared to death. I garbled what I was saying, but he got it and said, okay, write it just like you described it. Write it as a scene. And I thought, write a scene as journalism? And he'd pushed me over the edge, and that was the beginning for me of writing the new journalism.
And that really was the beginning of what you were doing. And in fact, your daring really went beyond just journalism. In fact, in this book, you talk about your daring not only as a journalist, but also as a single mom, as a divorcee, starting over in your life, your career. Tell us a little bit about that and what daring really means to you.
Well, as I say, I was a divorced single mom, and like so many young women today, struggling to make a living. But I wasn't just going to play it safe and take some boring corporate job. I was going to keep on trying to be a writer. Wrote 4 books before I wrote Passages. And when I needed to write Passages, I couldn't handle being Clay Felker's consort, going out to parties every night for journalism, taking care of my daughter, and trying to write a book and trying to write magazine stories. So I took the chance of suspending our relationship for, and as it turned out, 3 years to write a serious book. And our magnetism lasted. The book is mainly a love story, and the book was, to my amazement, a big success, and it changed our lives. And we later adopted a daughter from a refugee camp that we met together and married, and I was already in my late 40s before I had it all. But you know, you don't have it all forever. There came a time later in my life and in the book when my husband was dying very slowly, and I was caring for him. I kind of suspended my career, but the doctor said, you can't give up who you are. You're a writer. You're not going to always be a caregiver. And that was very good advice, which I talk about in the book. And the biggest dare was to come back after I lost the love of my life and dare to love again.
And you wrote, in fact, you wrote a book, Passages in Caregiving, about that experience, or about the experiences that, maybe could help other people through that. In addition, you wrote The Silent Passage. I mean, there are many things with passage being kind of the key word, right?
Well, they were always breaking taboos. I mean, people didn't ever talk about menopause before 1980s when I wrote that book, 1990 actually. People didn't talk about caregiving except for children. But, you know, the crisis of caregiving is one of the big health crises in our country. We can't lose 2 people for 1 by having everybody who gives for a family member or a spouse giving up their career because they have something to go back to. So I'm very proud of having broken a lot of taboos and getting people to talk about and think about how to meet a passage that hasn't been discussed yet.
Well, and lastly, we need to wrap up, but if you could just briefly tell us about the Daring Project and how you're daring readers to find their daring.
Well, you know, I really wanted to inspire young people in particular, but everybody, to be more daring. It's so much easier to just be safe and set, but often we find out we're not so set anyway. So SheehyDaringProject.com is my website, and I've got stories on there of young women who've done daring things and older women who shared daring moments earlier in their career. And I want people to submit their stories, capsules of their daring moments, and I'll find out, I'll call them up, interview them, and if it's a good enough story, I'll post it on the website for other people to be inspired by.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gail Sheehy. The name of the book is Daring My Passages. Really a fascinating book, and it's available at all major booksellers. Thanks again.
Thank you.